Hello, my friends. Let's start with what Keith Kellogg revealed about the upcoming negotiations on March 24 in Saudi Arabia. This week, we're sending so called technical teams to indirect negotiations in Saudi Arabia, where both sides will be present but in separate rooms. Mostly, you ask, okay, what are your terms? Explained Keith Kellogg, the US President's special envoy for Ukraine and Russia. He also stated that he doesn't believe Russia would dare to launch another invasion of Ukraine if a peace agreement is reached. According to him, this is due to the Russian government's fear of Trump and the astronomical losses both sides have suffered in the ongoing Russia Ukraine war. Overall, the US is hesitant to bring both sides together directly, as it could lead to unpredictable consequences. However, it's still difficult to predict what the outcome of these negotiations will be. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And now, let's start our frontline update with the border situation. In the Kursk direction, Russian attacks continue, but they haven't made any advances. The Ukrainian forces are holding the line despite facing up to 20 assaults per day. In the Belgorod direction, the situation is developing in an interesting way. According to Russian statements, Ukrainian forces have entered Russian territory and are trying to secure positions near the village of Demidovka. However, in response, Russian forces have intensified shelling of the villages in the Sumy region. Due to this, local authorities have announced an urgent evacuation of the town of Krasnopilya. Clearly, the operation has not gone according to plan. It's unclear which side has suffered greater losses, but the fact that Ukraine is now forced to evacuate its own settlements raises serious questions. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. In the Kharkiv direction, things remain quiet for now. Russia hasn't launched any new assaults, with all their forces focused on the Kursk and Belgorod directions. The only minor activity continues in Vovchansk, but there have been no significant changes over the past 24 hours. Now, let's move straight to the Pokrovsk direction, despite reports from Ukrainian forces that the situation has slightly improved. Russian assaults continue along the entire front line. They are storming Novoalexandrivka, Удачне, Котлине, Звірове, Чунишине, Лисівка, Промінь, Yelizavetivka and Tarasevka. Heavy shelling also persists, but there have been no territorial changes over the past 24 hours as Ukrainian forces successfully hold the defense. Geolocated footage confirms that FPV drones are actively in use, with new video evidence emerging. Additionally, Ukrainian troops are inflicting losses on Russian forces in Shevchenko, but they haven't been able to fully liberate the village. However, today Russian sources claim to have regained control over the northern outskirts of Shevchenko. Over the last 24 hours, the Russian army has recaptured the northern part of Shevchenko and halted the Ukrainian offensive that began 12 days ago. Essentially, they acknowledge that Ukrainian counterattacks stopped 12 days ago, allowing Russian forces to reclaim lost positions. Some analysts suggest that if Ukraine had focused its reserves on the Pokrovsk front instead of offensive actions in the Belgorod region, Russian forces might have been pushed back instead of advancing. Ukrainian forces also confirm Russian advances. The Russians have occupied the northern part of Shevchenko. Their push from the western sector, where they set up an ambush toward the north, covered 700 meters. Our fighters from the Art Division targeted the Russian troops in the built-up area with precision artillery strikes. Currently, on the northeastern section, remains under our control. Meanwhile, in the Kurakhove direction, Russian troops are assaulting Preobrazhenka, Oleksiivka, Konstantinopel, and the village of Rozliv. Despite continued high activity in this area, Ukrainian forces successfully hold the defense, and Russian troops remain unable to advance toward the Donetsk region's borders. In the Velika Novosilka direction, Russian forces continue their attacks near Burlatske, Privilne, and Novopil. However, over the past 24 hours, there have been no territorial changes as Ukrainian forces successfully repelled all Russian assaults. In the Zaporizhzhia direction, Russian troops continue rear area shelling, but there have been no recorded assaults along the front line. However, this doesn't indicate that the Russian offensive has stopped. They have already made some advances and are now regrouping and accumulating reserves for further assaults. Several settlements remain in question as Russian sources claim control over P'ятихатки, Lobkove, Sherbaki, and Mali Sherbaki. However, Ukrainian side hasn't yet confirmed these reports. We will have to wait and see how the situation unfolds, but current developments remain concerning. In the Kherson direction, the Russians continue shelling the right bank, but over the past 24 hours, no new attacks on the islands have been recorded, and the front line remains unchanged. Now, moving to the Toretsk direction, here the Russians are not reducing their activity and are trying at least to regain lost positions in Toretsk. However, as before, they are unsuccessful and the Ukrainian forces are holding the defense. Fighting is also ongoing near Krymsk with assaults on Dachne and attempts to break through to Delivka. However, no changes have been recorded in the past 24 hours. Well, the first consequences of the Russians regrouping in the Toretsk direction are already visible. The defense of Toretsk has started to weaken significantly. The Russians have regained control of the most of the Toretsk mine area, advanced in Krymsk, and from there are organizing raids toward the ponds. We're responding with mobile defense. However, the balance of forces and resources is heavily not in our favor. Hopefully, the right strategic decisions will be made in this sector. Otherwise, the situation could become critical quite quickly. In the context of defending Konstantinivka, this is not a good sign. In the Chasiv Yar direction, the Russians are assaulting Minkivka and Novomarkove. So far, they haven't managed to establish a foothold, but the attacks continue. Further south, they are pushing toward Alexandru Shultine, but no changes to the front line have been recorded over the past 24 hours. The Ukrainian forces continue to repel all attacks, although Russian activity in the area is increasing. In the Siversk direction, the Russians are currently only assaulting Verkhnyokamensky with no other changes, and the front line remains stable. In the Liman direction, the Russians are assaulting Yampolivka, Zelena Dolina, Lipove, and pushing toward Novomykhailivka. No changes have been recorded over the past 24 hours, but the activity remains very high. The strikes on Liman also continue. Geolocation footage showed Ukrainian forces destroying Russian FPV drones near the village of Terne. The footage is horrific, so I won't share it, but the number of destroyed Russians continue to rise with each passing day. In the Borova direction, the Russians are pushing toward Boguslavka, but otherwise there is no major activity. Geolocation videos have emerged confirming that the Russians are actively working in the frontline zone with FPV drones, mostly attempting to destroy Ukrainian equipment. However, offensive actions have ceased here. Further south, there is a lull with no new attacks from the Russians, and the situation remains stable. In the Kupiansk direction, the Russians are assaulting Petropavlivka, but there is no major activity elsewhere, and shelling continues as before. In the area near Dvorichna, the Russians are trying to break through near the city and expand their controlled territory in the fields, but for now, the Ukrainian forces are holding their positions and the front line remains unchanged. The Russians are also released a video of strike on a train in Kropivnitsky. They claim they didn't target residential buildings. However, it's clear from the footage that they were striking military targets, but hits near residential buildings were also recorded. Also, last night the Russians actively shelled Odessa. Preliminary reports suggest that the Russians used Shaheds with thermobaric munitions capable of destroying entire buildings. There are reports of fires in a multi apartment residential building, in a shopping center, and at a business enterprise. At least 20 unmanned aerial vehicles are mentioned. But France, as we all probably understand from Zelensky's statements, there is no 30-day energy ceasefire for now. Only on the 24th will there be an exchange of documents specifying which objects shouldn't be targeted and so on. So today we can see that this agreement hasn't yet come into force.
That is, there will be no attacks on energy infrastructure, as well as it sounds, other civilian infrastructure. I raised this issue with President Trump. I said that, in my opinion, our side will prepare civilian infrastructure objects that we consider to be civilian infrastructure. So, I don't want there to be any misunderstanding about what the parties will agree on, or let's say, God willing, the parties will agree at the next closest meeting, which will be on Monday in Saudi Arabia.
Meanwhile, pressure from Trump on Europe has started to manifest. The European Union has definitely rejected the confiscation of Russia's frozen assets. The European Union has ruled out the possibility of confiscating more than 200 billion euros in frozen Russian assets. This is according to the conclusions of the summit. Several countries opposed such a step, citing European Union legislation, risks to the financial sector, and the need to use the interest from the assets to support Ukraine. As it seems, Russia will take the territories, Ukraine will not join NATO, and soon their frozen assets will be returned to Russia. And of course, talks about lifting sanctions are already underway. It's reported that this will happen immediately after a ceasefire. Overall, is this capitulation or victory? Share your thoughts in the comments. And Giorgia Meloni made another statement calling for the extension of NATO Article 5 to Ukraine. Regarding security guarantees, we are doing our part. I took a position that, in my opinion, was clear regarding the proposals put forward by some of our colleagues, which, frankly speaking, are few and not very effective compared to the proposals Italy is putting forward. For example, expanding Article 5, let's say the structure that supports the expansion of NATO's fifth article to Ukraine, seems to me a simpler and more effective proposal than other suggestions, also because it would help expose the bluff. If Russia doesn't plan to invade the territory of its neighbors again, it's unclear why it shouldn't accept security guarantees that are purely defensive. I believe this proposal, which has naturally attracted the interest of Ukraine, NATO, and several leaders, should be brought up for discussion. Friends, please share your opinions on this in the comments. And that's all from me. So please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell to stay updated on all the latest news. Thank you for watching and see you next time. Bye bye.